There is a particular kind of grief that nobody really warns you about. It is not the grief that comes from losing someone to death or distance. It is something quieter, something more confusing, the grief that arrives when you are the one choosing to let go. When you are the one walking away from a relationship, a habit, a version of yourself, or even a dream you carried for years. And yet, despite being the one making the choice, it still feels like something is being ripped from you. It still feels like loss. It still hurts in ways you cannot quite explain to the people around you. And that confusion, the dissonance between choosing something and still mourning it, is exactly what we need to talk about today. Because here is what psychology tells us: letting go does not just feel like losing something external. It feels like losing a part of who you are. And that is not dramatic. That is not weakness. That is one of the most deeply human experiences there is. To understand why, we have to start with how the human mind builds identity. From the time we are young, we do not just form relationships with people and things, we form relationships with ourselves through those people and things. The psychologist Kenneth Gergen described this as the relational self, the idea that who we believe we are is fundamentally shaped by our connections. You are not just in a relationship with your partner has become part of how you understand yourself. You are not just pursuing a career, that career has become part of the story you tell about your worth and your future. You are not just holding on to a friendship, that friendship holds a version of you that exists nowhere else. This is why, when those things leave or when we choose to release them, the loss does not stay contained to the external world. It travels inward. It quietly dismantles pieces of our self-concept, and we are left standing in front of a mirror, wondering who we are now that this thing is gone. Think about the last time you ended a significant relationship, romantic or otherwise. Even if you knew it was the right decision, even if every rational part of you understood it needed to happen, there was likely a moment, maybe many moments, where you missed not just the person but the you that existed with them. The you who had inside jokes, who had a Saturday morning routine, who had someone to call when something small and funny happened. That version of you does not have an obvious place to go when the relationship ends. And grieving that version of yourself is just as real as grieving the relationship itself. Psychologists call this phenomenon self-concept disruption, and it is one of the most underexplored dimensions of grief. When any significant attachment ends, we experience what researchers describe as a contraction of the self. Studies by Dr. Arthur Aaron, who pioneered the self-expansion model of relationships, found that close relationships literally expand our sense of self. We absorb the other person's traits, perspectives, and experiences into our own identity over time. So when that relationship ends, we do not just lose them. We lose the expanded version of ourselves that they helped create. We shrink, and that shrinking feels like dying a small death. This is also why letting go of old beliefs, old patterns, or old versions of yourself can feel so threatening, even when you consciously want to change. Imagine someone who has spent decades defining themselves as the strong one in their family. They have never asked for help. They have never shown vulnerability. And now, in therapy or through hard-earned self-awareness, they are beginning to understand that this armor is hurting them. But even as they recognize this, there is a terrifying resistance. Because letting go of being the strong one does not just feel like changing a behavior. It feels like erasing a fundamental truth about who they are. The ego, in its deep and primal need for continuity, interprets change as annihilation. This is not a flaw. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do: protect the coherence of your identity. The brain craves narrative consistency. It wants the story of you to hold together across time. And anything that disrupts that story, even positive change, triggers a subtle alarm system. Psychologists refer to this as identity threat, and it explains why we sometimes sabotage our own growth, why we return to relationships we know are wrong for us, why we cling to habits that no longer serve us. It is not irrationality. It is the mind's desperate attempt to preserve a self it knows how to be. But here is what is also true, and this is where the real tenderness of this conversation lives: the parts of yourself that you are afraid to lose by letting go, they are not as fragile as you think. In fact, the most essential parts of you cannot be taken by any ending. What you learned in that relationship, the way it shaped your capacity for love, the resilience you built in surviving it, that stays. What you developed through that chapter of your career, the discipline, the creativity, the hunger that does not disappear when the job does. What you gave to that friendship, the laughter, the loyalty, the depth of care that is woven into who you are now, permanently. Letting go is not subtraction. Even when it feels that way. Even when it aches like subtraction. It is more like renovation. The structure of who you are is being rearranged to make room for something that fits better, something that aligns more honestly with who you are becoming. And yes, renovation is loud and uncomfortable and disorienting. But it is not destruction. The work, then, is to learn how to grieve without catastrophizing. To let yourself mourn the version of you that existed in what you are releasing, without deciding that the mourning means you made the wrong choice. To hold space for the grief of contraction while trusting in the possibility of expansion on the other side. This is not something that happens in a single moment of decision. It is a practice. Some days you will feel free. Some days the absence will sit heavy in your chest like a stone. Both of those days are part of the process. Neither of them is the final truth. If you are in the middle of letting go of something right now, a person, a habit, a belief about yourself, a life you thought you were going to have, I want you to hear this: the pain you feel is not evidence that you are broken. It is evidence that you loved something enough for it to matter. It is evidence that you were present enough in your own life for your experiences to leave a mark. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be honored. And as you move through this, try to offer yourself the same compassion you would offer a friend. You would not tell a friend to simply move on or to stop being sad because they made the choice themselves. You would sit with them. You would remind them that grief does not follow logic. You would tell them that they are still whole, even when they feel fragmented. Tell yourself that, too. Because the deepest psychological truth about letting go is this: you do not lose yourself in the release. You find yourself more clearly, more completely, on the other side of it. The self that survives the letting go is not diminished. It is distilled. And that version of you, the one who had the courage to release what no longer served, the one who chose growth over comfort and honesty over familiarity, that version is the one you have been becoming all along. You are not losing a part of yourself. You are making room for more of yourself. And that, no matter how much it hurts right now, is worth holding on to.